Good morning, everyone, and welcome into Wake and Take. It's your boy Jason, and we've got some football to talk about today. News is still developing all around the league, so we're going to talk about a few players that were released, a few players that were signed, of course, Calvin Ridley's big payday, as well as get a little bit of a preview into what to expect in next week's NFL rules meeting. There have been a few proposals that we'll kind of go through and talk about just to talk about it, find out what might be changing in the sport that we love. So go ahead, take out your coffee, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome into the chat. Good morning to you, Jamie. Good morning to you, the Hairy Snowman. Good morning, afternoon, night, whenever you are watching this. If you're not live with us, we still appreciate you tuning in, and happy driving to those of you listening on the podcast side of things. Good morning to you, Anthony. Good morning, Bach. Man, great to see you all. Great to talk about some football. Before we get into Calvin Ridley, though, we'll go with a couple quick ones, little quick hitters, little news stuff. We'll start with Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco, of course, last year kind of resurged onto the scene, leading the Browns to the playoffs, winning a few games, absolutely slinging it, keeping his hopes alive to stay within the league and make some more money and potentially play some more football. And Joe Flacco has signed a one-year contract with the Indianapolis Colts. He's getting $4.5 million guaranteed, and he can earn another $4 million in performance-based incentives. Now, it's a solid contract. It makes him a really good backup on a team with a quarterback who, frankly, we're still a little unsure about what could happen with his injury history. We just saw him, Anthony Richardson, miss basically the entire season last year, and Gardner Minshew come in and play well. So I would say with 100 to 1,000,000% certainty, if you own Anthony Richardson, you need to go handcuff him with Joe Flacco. You kind of have to. I know that we don't want injuries to happen to Anthony Richardson, but based on his play style last year, it's safe to assume, that he'll probably miss at least a couple games with something. Joe Flacco will have some action, and in a worst case, you'll have a guy who we just saw do really, really well when given the starting opportunity. I mean, in a flash. I mean, it isn't even like he worked on the offseason with the Browns. He came in because they didn't like what PJ Walker was doing. And, oh my God, who was the other quarterback? The other quarterback, the rookie that they brought in. They did Dorian Thompson-Robinson. They didn't like what he was cooking up either. So they're like, let's go get Flacco. And he came in and immediately shined. So I would assume with a full offseason with the team, he's going to be a really solid backup. And if anything, hopefully nothing happens to Anthony Richardson. But if something does, Joe Flacco would slide right in and be a pretty fantasy-relevant quarterback for you in a pinch. So definitely this is one of the times where you've got to handcuff your quarterback and superflex, maybe even single QB if you really want to. Joe Flacco. You got to get him. You got to get Joe Flacco. You just have to. Let's go ahead and move on to – let's just go ahead and talk about Calvin Ridley. Let's just go ahead and talk about Calvin Ridley because this is the big story. This is the thumbnail. This is what everyone's talking about right now, and that is Calvin Ridley signing a 4-year contract with the Tennessee Titans worth up to $92 million. 50 of that is guaranteed. Massive, massive payday for Calvin Ridley, and it says a lot of different things about the Tennessee Titans. But first, let's just talk about Calvin Ridley. Does he deserve the contract? I'm going to go with yes-ish. I mean, that's a massive contract for him, but we know because of his name equity and the fact that he's still only 29, which is not too old for a wide receiver, he was going to get a big payday. And in this wide receiver market, that's about right. And with only 50 of it guaranteed, it's not like all 90 of that is actually ever going to come off the books. I think that this is a decent contract for both sides. I know that this was the biggest one Calvin Ridley got offered, and I know it's a massive contract, but I mean, we saw a good year from him last year, and I'm going to put emphasis on good. I mean, when you don't play football for almost 2 seasons, you leave in like week 5, 2 years ago, and because of mental health, and then you get suspended for another season and you're just completely removed from the game. To come back immediately on a brand new team with a brand new quarterback, with a brand new everything, and still get 1,000 yards, still get 8 receiving touchdowns, that's pretty respectable to me. And, and that's why I think that Calvin Ridley is still one of the better wide receivers in the league. I'm not going to get over my skis here. I didn't roster Calvin Ridley last year. I'm not going to roster Calvin Ridley this year, but I do certainly think he's still going to probably cross that 1,000-yard mark threshold. He's still going to be a very serviceable option, and he's still going to score some touchdowns, and he's still going to get some people some fantasy points. And we're talking about now the Tennessee Titans also bringing in Mason Rudolph as a backup quarterback to Will Levis. This shows the investment in Calvin Ridley, the trading for DeAndre Hopkins last year, the bringing in a backup quarterback and leaving Ryan Tannehill. It shows the Titans' commitment to Will Levis. So my big thing when seeing Calvin Ridley sign this big of a contract is how invested the Titans are in on Will Levis. So if you could still get him for a cheap price in Superflex leagues, you've got to do it. You absolutely have to, because I do think that Will Levis has some of the stuff that we're hoping for in an NFL quarterback. We know he's got the arm, and we know that he's a good quarterback. Cody Carpentier, Matty Kiwoom, tons of people that do all their research are heavy in on Will Levis, and it makes a lot of sense. So I would go trade for him. I would get him wherever I can. I would probably start drafting him. This Tennessee Titans team with Brian Callahan will be throwing the ball a ton. Tony Pollard's going to get a ton of targets. Calvin Ridley's going to get a ton of targets. Chig Okonkwo is going to get some targets. Calvin Ridley going to get some targets. DeAndre Hopkins going to get some targets. Tajay Spears is going to get some target. This is going to be a pass-heavy offense. They moved on from Derrick Henry for a reason. They've invested in Calvin Ridley for a reason. We haven't seen DeAndre Hopkins move for a reason. The Tennessee Titans are ready to take that next step. And it all starts with Will Levis. Get him on your rosters wherever you can, especially at his current price tag. Can't stress it enough. Get Will Levis. You won't regret it. And probably, I'm going to say it. I know that this is maybe hearsay or whatever, but I would say maybe invest in DeAndre Hopkins. This guy has definitely taken a massive hit all offseason, and with this Calvin Ridley news, an even bigger hit in value, but it's still DeAndre Hopkins we're talking about, ladies and gentlemen, the guy who was widely considered the best wide receiver in the league just a couple seasons ago, who still has it. We saw that was it 3 touchdowns he had against the Falcons or just 2? Either way, really, really good game with Will Levis's first start. He still has a lot left in the tank, DeAndre Hopkins does. And Calvin Ridley isn't like an alpha receiver like DeAndre Hopkins is. He's more all over the field, more of a route runner type guy. And DeAndre Hopkins is still going to score some touchdowns. And if the Titans are passing the ball a lot, there's going to be tons of opportunity for both Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins to feed. And DeAndre Hopkins is basically free right now. I mean, I feel like you could get that guy for a 3rd-round pick, which I think is just honestly ridiculous. Unfortunately, I guess it's kind of fortunately, I'd been trying to move on from DeAndre Hopkins, try to get some youth on my Trade Gods team, but it looks like I'm just going to be stuck with DeAndre Hopkins, and I'm not really going to be that upset about it. I'm still over the roster limit, so I've got to make some moves elsewhere. But I think that DeAndre Hopkins' value right now is pretty low, and I would be buying in on him along with Will Levis, and probably not Calvin Ridley, as he's going to be a bit too expensive. I do think Calvin Ridley is going to be a bit too expensive for the type of production we can expect from him. Do think he'll be good. Don't necessarily think he'll outperform his ADP, and probably won't underperform his ADP. He's just going to be a solid asset that you're not too upset about. Wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, getting you some points, being on your roster, but probably not someone you're truly excited about rostering in Dynasty, at least maybe at the end of this year. But we'll see, right? We'll see, right? Either way, this Tennessee Titans offense taking a step forward, becoming a heavy passing offense, get Will Levis and probably get DeAndre Hopkins as he's so cheap right now. Which then will move us on to some other wide receiver talk. We had a few wide receivers released yesterday, which just kind of puts us where we're at in the terms of the wide receiver market, in terms of careers, yada, yada, yada. They all have basically the same situation here. They're all about 30 years old. They all have injury history, and they all cost a ton of money. We'll start with Mike Williams. Will made it. He's gone. He's gone. We talked about this a few weeks ago even. We did a whole episode on cut candidates, and Mike Williams was the biggest one. We knew it was going to happen, and it happened. Mike Williams' release frees up $20 million in cap space, which is a crazy amount to free up for releasing a player like Mike Williams. And I know that's because he had a massive contract. He never really earned that contract. He, of course, showed some flashes, but he could just never stay on the field as good of an athlete as he is. He's still a really good wide receiver, and I'm very excited to see where he can land. I know this is going to sound crazy, But if you can get Mike Williams for a 4th-round pick right now, I think I would do it. I think a 4th or even a 5th-round pick, or just like some sort of bench clogger. Someone's looking to get rid of Mike Williams in your league, and I think I would take the chance. I think he's the younger of the 3 wide receivers we're going to be talking about. I don't even think he's crossed 30 yet. I guess I probably should have double-checked that. But I want to say he's right at 29. And I think that he's probably going to be the wide receiver that actually lands somewhere pretty nice. I know the Chiefs are in on him, being that, he's in division. They've watched him play. Yeah, he is 29. So I think that Mike Williams will probably sign somewhere pretty good for fantasy, and will probably be a guy who, same thing, right? Where he's going to have some ceiling games and then probably get hurt. But I think you'll be happy about rostering him. I think this is the floor, and I think that maybe you could get him now and then flip him when he signs somewhere nice, because I do think that he's probably going to sign somewhere nice. Where that is not the same for Odell Beckham and Michael Thomas. Odell Beckham Jr. is being released by the Ravens. It's a post-June 1st designation, so there's still going to be some time here before he's officially gone. I believe he can still meet with teams and everything, but I doubt too many teams are going to be interested in Odell Beckham. He just didn't look the same coming off that ACL injury, and he's just, with his name value, going to cost a lot of money. I wouldn't be surprised if one team took like an $8 million guaranteed deal or something on him, maybe a little bit more, just because he's a wide receiver for like one season. But last year, we only saw 565 yards and 3 touchdowns from him on a Ravens team that was passing the ball more, that had some opportunities where Odell Beckham could slide in and be the main target, and just never really did enough. So I don't know how much he's going to demand on the open market. And I also don't know if he's really going to land somewhere nice. I don't think these competitor teams are going to really be looking at Odell Beckham as a true option. And kind of same can be said about Michael Thomas. Michael Thomas also never really returned to form after his injury. Finished last year with 448 yards and a touchdown. Totally fine. But with his name value, with what he's probably going to ask for on the open market, I don't think that his prospects are very great either. Both him and Odell Beckham will probably sign somewhere, but not for a lot of money, and not on an offense that's really going to want to use them a ton. I'm sure they'll play some complimentary role, maybe score some touchdowns, maybe have a big game in the season or something. But I'm not expecting too much from either of these guys. They're both 31 years old, not looking like they used to off of an injury. Now in an open market where there's a ton of wide receivers who are better than them still available, even with their name value. So I don't think there's much to expect with Odell, with Michael Thomas. I would say in your deeper leagues, keep holding on to him, but in your shallow leagues, you could probably just release him. I doubt anyone's, clamoring to pick up Michael Thomas or Odell Beckham right now. Which will lead us to another wide receiver story, the New England Patriots. Yesterday, with Calvin Ridley getting signed, that was one of the players that the Patriots were tied to. It was expected that the Patriots would offer a nice contract to Calvin Ridley. Of course, not many teams are going to offer the contract the Titans did, so they got beat out. And Josina Anderson, reporter, has come out and said that the Patriots have moved on from missing out on Calvin Ridley and have already decided they will be addressing wide receiver in the draft. I hope and pray that the Patriots draft Marvin Harrison Jr. and trade for Justin Fields. I think that would be very exciting. And instead of me saying it will happen, like I was saying with the Falcons all last month, I'm just going to say I hope it happens. I really hope the Patriots trade for Justin Fields and draft Marvin Harrison Jr. I think that's a recipe for success. I still personally think Justin Fields has shown enough to give you some promise. And I think with the right coaching staff, with the right team around him, he still could be really good. And we saw him play really well last season with the Bears, had his best passing season yet, despite having the least amount of games played in his career yet. So I think Justin Fields is still a good quarterback, and I'm really still shocked that he's not anywhere right now. So send him to the Patriots, let them draft Marvin Harrison Jr., and you're talking about a really solid squad, I think. Which then will move us to the Bears, as they have signed a backup quarterback, Brett Rypien, whatever. I've never figured out how to say his name, and it doesn't matter, as that's a massive quarterback room. We are now talking about Justin Fields, Brett Rypien, and I had the name written down earlier and totally forgot it. Tyson Bagent. Tyson Bagent is the third quarterback there, and then with them also having the 101, it is expected they will take Caleb Williams. That is 4 quarterbacks potentially on this roster. Something's going to have to give. So I think with this Brett Rypien signing, it is guaranteed that either Justin Fields is traded or the 101 is traded. I really highly doubt they go into the next season with 4 quarterbacks on the roster. That's a ridiculous mismanagement of roster space. They only had 2 last year. It was Bagent and Fields. It would shock me to see 4 next season. And I think Brett Rippon and Tyson Bagent are going to end up being backups to Caleb Williams, with Justin Fields being sent somewhere else, hopefully the New England Patriots. So that is it for news. We kind of flew through it, but I do have some proposals from teams for next week's annual rules meeting. I guess it's a little more than a week. It's like a week and a half. March 24th is when this meeting will be happening. It happens every year, and it is something fun, right, to see what kind of new rules will be happening. But we don't know which ones of these will actually go into effect. So let's go ahead and talk about some of these, and then we'll answer some questions as usual. So here is the full list. There were 12 rule changes that are being proposed at this meeting. The first one, the Detroit Lions have voted to amend Rule 15, Section 1, Article 1, which protects the club's ability to challenge a third ruling following one successful challenge. So basically, they want to be able to have a third challenge. That's one of them. That could be interesting. The Eagles have proposed eliminating the first touch spot after the receiving team possesses the ball, which I guess would be wherever, like a punt or whatever, whoever downs the ball first, that wouldn't be where the receiving team actually gets it, which I think would be interesting. The third rule amendment was by the Eagles, another one. The Eagles were all over the place here. And they wanted to permit a team to maintain possession of the ball after a score by substituting an offensive play for an onside kick attempt. This is what we saw in the XFL. This would be a 4th and 20 from the 20-yard line. If they get it, they could get the ball back. So that rule is being proposed and will be talked about at the rules meeting. So just keep an eye out on that. Could be seeing some more fantasy points, maybe. The next rule is by the Indianapolis Colts. They want the ability to challenge any play within the final 2 minutes of a half or game. As we know, you can't do that right now for some odd reason. I'm glad that this has been proposed. I don't know why coaches can't challenge plays in the most important moments of a game. So I'm glad that this is being proposed, and I hope that does get overturned. That would be a good thing to see. I know it'll drag out the last minute of the game, but whatever. We need it. Rule 5, this is by the Detroit Lions. They want to amend something, and they want to remove the requirement that a player must spend 1 day on the active roster following the final roster reduction in order to become eligible to be designated for return. Don't really know what that means. We'll go ahead and move on. The 6th rule, also by the Lions, they wanted to provide clubs with an unlimited number of designated for return transactions in the postseason. I guess that's just so they can get more people on their roster. The 7th rule change proposition was by the Buffalo Bills. They want to expand the standard elevation rules, permitting clubs to elevate a third player from its practice squad who is a bona fide quarterback to be an emergency third quarterback. So the Bills are kind of seeing the issue around the league where there's just not enough quarterbacks on the roster. And so they want to add another emergency quarterback into kind of the rule book, which I think makes a lot of sense, especially with injuries piling up in games. The Steelers have asked to move the trade deadline. How exciting is that? They want to wait until it's after week 9 games. Right now it's week 8. So add an extra week for the trade deadline. I think that makes a lot of sense. I feel like it's a little too early, especially with, them adding a week to the season and then not extending the trade deadline. I think it would make sense to extend the trade deadline. So that's really cool. The 9th one is by the Browns, Lions, Jets, Eagles, 49ers, and Commanders. And this one, they want to wait to move the trade deadline to after week 10. So that's now 5 squads we've talked about proposing to extend the trade deadline. So I think with such a positive, kind of gathering around that rule change, I think we'll see it. So look for the trade deadline to get moved back this offseason. The next rule change by the Buffalo Bills, they want to make injury reporting rules for players who do not travel with their clubs away from the home city to be fairer. So I guess teams don't necessarily have to report why a player isn't traveling. They want to make that clear. The The Jacksonville Jaguars want to make available a working box Hawkeye replay feed in the coaches booth. That would be cool. That way the coaches could kind of make sure they want a challenge, be able to watch the replays. I mean, I just think in general, the NFL would benefit from being able to have a better replay system. We saw the Sky Judge with the AFL when that was brought back a few years ago. That would be awesome. And just the fact that the coaches could potentially have a little replay feed in their coaching booth would be awesome. So that's the Hawkeye replay. That's an interesting one. And then finally, the Eagles want game clocks to display tenths of seconds for the final 60 seconds of each half. So basically when it's getting down to the wire, they want to be able to see more than just the full second to make sure they can snap the ball more accurately, I guess, which makes a lot of sense. So I guess we'll be talking about a few of those, especially if they get passed. This is just some fun little rule changes that might be coming. I know it doesn't really mean anything to you guys, especially since it's not a week and a half, but I just like to go ahead and put you in the shoes of how the NFL organizations are treating the rule book right now. I think we could definitely come out of here saying that there's probably going to be an extension for the trade deadline, maybe something with the onside kicks, and then maybe something following like the replays, how well we can get access to replays and all that, whether it be coaching booth or like an all-seeing Sky Judge would be really, really neat. So those are some of the rule changes. Notice nothing about the tush push is being discussed this year. Thank God. That's awesome to finally move on from that. So that is everything I have for you guys today. Let's go ahead and pop into the chat, see if we have any questions. Let's see. Levis uptick with recent Tennessee moves. Yes. Yes. Monster mistakes by two different GMs of the Titans, letting A.J. Brown walk and then giving Calvin Ridley a huge contract. This is true. Why not just pay A.J. Brown? But whatever. I guess the second organization says that they need a wide receiver now. And Calvin Ridley, I do think, is still a good receiver. I mean, you don't get 1,000 yards if you're bad, especially after not playing football for almost 2 years. He's still a good receiver. I think he'll be solid. Are we getting a Mind of Mansion today? No. Podfather is in Japan for the next he's there this week. I believe he's there next week as well. And then he'll be back. And then he's going to probably be pretty heavy on the fast draft stuff that we're teasing. So, yeah, I actually don't know when the next Mind of Mansion will be, but there will definitely be a Mind of Mansion over this offseason for sure. Just not while he's in Japan. Anyone remember the other Mike Williams? I do remember the other Mike Williams. Good little throwback there. What can I get out of Amari Cooper? Will 2 mid-seconds be viable? I don't know if I would give 2 seconds for Amari Cooper, so I don't really know if you would get that, but I'm also not the guy buying Amari Cooper. I think probably 1 second is what you're looking at, and even then, I just don't know. I'm sure a lot of people are going to look at this Jerry Jeudy signing as something like, oh, Amari Cooper isn't going to be getting as many targets anymore, yada, yada, yada. I don't know. I don't think you could get 2 seconds out of him. You might be able to. If you can, I would definitely do that. I personally wouldn't pay 2 seconds for Amari Cooper. I also probably personally wouldn't give a second for Amari Cooper. But that's just because I really like this draft class, and I'm not a big Amari Cooper guy. I don't know why. I know he always produces. I'm not like crazy in on him. So anyway. The whole stadium lights, which should flash when the play clock expires. So many plays. You know how cool that would be if it like kind of turned into like a rave almost. Like, yeah, the stadium lights just go off when the play clock expires. That's how you know it's a delay of game. That would be pretty exciting. That would be kind of exciting, but maybe cause some seizures over time. Is he doing business in Japan? No, just a little vacay with the fam. Just a little vacay with the fam. Good times. He's having a great time. He posted in the Discord. Go check it out. Join the Player Profiler Discord. Him and his family went to an owl cafe. Very cool. Little picture with him and his family with some owls. It's a hoot. Jesus Christ. I'm ending the show. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. This was another fun episode of Wake and Take. And I hope to see you all tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern on the Player Profiler, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We'll have a very special guest, so tune into that. I'll be joined by Austin Abbott, which will be very exciting, breaking down some of these free agency signings, getting his hot take. So make sure you like this video and make sure you subscribe to Player Profiler so you can tune in tomorrow. Have a terrific Thursday and a wonderful rest of your week. Peace.
Hey, I want to take a moment to thank you for tuning in. It's important to me that all of our media be free. This is only possible because of you, allowing a true independent sports media enterprise to thrive unlike any other in the business. So please subscribe to the All In package to continue to make all of this possible, to ensure that all of our stats, information, data, content is available to you, especially you, the people that get the site and get the show.